Welcome everyone back to the Learn Workplace Climate Action Ask Me Anything. I'm really thrilled to introduce Drew Wilkinson. He is an employee engagement guru, former Microsoft employee, and the founder of the Climate Leadership Collective, and also one of our resident experts in this Slack channel. So I'm sure everyone's very familiar with him, but Drew, I'm going to pass it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Hopefully you do know who I am. I'm in the channel quite often, but if not, as Ayana said, there aren't that many of us that work in employee engagement for sustainability full time. Ayana and I being two of a pretty small, lonely crowd sometimes. But yeah, my mission is to make sustainability part of everybody's job. So I started doing that almost 10 years ago inside Microsoft, and we can talk a little bit more about that as this goes on. But for the last 2 years, I've been running my own sustainability consulting business, trying to take that model of making sustainability part of everybody's job and figuring out what it looks like to do that in all companies, all industries. And of course, the Learn Workplace Climate Action community here in Work on Climate is a really important part of that journey to help get this information out there and to help empower as many of you as humanly possible. So really excited to be here, and this topic is near and dear to my heart and something I spend a significant amount of my time thinking about.
Yeah. So why don't we actually start a little bit broader than employees and just think about stakeholders more generally? Why is stakeholder engagement so important for workplace climate action?
Yeah, so if you think about all of the different stakeholders that can influence the behavior of a company, right? You've got employees, shareholders, customers, the board or the executives, the regulators and various governments, the public. All of these actors in our society can exert pressure and influence on a company to change its behavior. And likewise, companies can engage those various stakeholders in different ways depending on the issue. So when it comes to workplace climate action, obviously we're talking about the workplace. Employees are kind of at the top of that list in terms of the opportunity that's available to, again, exert some influence on how the company behaves in the world. And so employees have a very special role to play in helping not only push their companies to get more serious about addressing climate change, but in a world of basically voluntary sustainability commitments that don't really have any teeth or any government regulation or oversight, employees also have a critical role to play in holding companies accountable to the things they said they were going to do. Because anyone can make a claim about doing something net zero by 2040 or 2050. It's a long ways away, but actually showing progress along the way is much harder to do. And employees can play a really critical part. And as I said, pushing and also holding these companies accountable to the things they said they were going to do.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you bring up that employees have more opportunity or power than they might think that they do because they are sitting obviously so closely to decision makers.
Yeah.
Um, and I know you mentioned employees have a really key role in holding their companies accountable to climate. Can you talk a little bit more about how employees do that and how they advance sustainability more broadly within an organization?
Totally. So let's first talk about how sustainability is actually implemented inside of a company. So most companies at this point, at least the larger ones, have a chief sustainability officer or an equivalent. There's some executive who's like, I'm in charge of our sustainability goals, programs, commitments, progress, all of that. And then you typically have some full-time professionals, people who are measuring the emissions of the company, the water, the waste, all of that stuff. And then doing, as you said in your series a couple of weeks ago, the accounting, the reporting to show all of that stuff. But in most cases, that number of people who work on sustainability full-time inside of a company is less than 1% of the overall workforce. So the role that employees can play, well, because they make up that 99 point whatever percent of the entire workforce, they can democratize sustainability. They can find ways to look at the intersection of their job functions, right? Software engineers, financial analysts, program managers, every single job, HR professionals, every job function that generically exists in a company intersects with sustainability in some unique combination of power and influence and resources and all of that. So the first thing employees can do is to figure out how to make sustainability part of not only their job, that's the beginning of the journey, but if you're a software engineer, for example, guess what? There are millions of other software engineers out there. And so it's not just about you and I getting climate jobs or weaving sustainability into our jobs. It's about greening every single profession and discipline that exists. And if you're the first one to figure out how to do that, going back and sharing it with your professional networks, so that sustainability is something that's baked into every single job in every single company. That is how you make sustainability part of a company's culture. And that is much more durable and, forgive me for the pun, more sustainable than having a small, chronically under-resourced, under-influenced team who is solely responsible for it. Now, a quick caveat, you're a software engineer working on sustainability is in no way, shape, or form a direct replacement for a full-time carbon accountant. Not at all. I'm not trying to say it's that, but they can augment that. And then, of course, the other thing that employees can do in terms of advancing sustainability inside the company is to support the sustainability team. Let the executives know we care about this. We work at this company because of our sustainability commitments and progress. Because those teams are, again, chronically under-resourced and under-influenced. And when the belt tightens, when there's an economic downturn, when there's layoffs, when there's downsizing, those are typically the first things to go. But it's harder to do that if you have broad support from your workforce saying, no, this is really, really important to us. And then as far as holding companies accountable, as you said in your session, companies start at the simple, easy stuff, and that's often the waste that shows up in your office buildings. Great, that's a good place to start. But it is by no means the end of the journey for a company reducing its impact on the environment. And so what employees can do is, again, not only hold employers accountable to do the things they said they do, many of which take 5, 10, 20 years to do, but to also look at all the things they haven't said that they were going to do. You also outlined this in your talk, right? Where are the company's financial investments sitting? What are we enabling in our 401k plans or our pensions? What role does our technology or our product or our services play in the actual world beyond just our own operations? How are people using our things? Are they using them to discover and extract more oil and gas, for example? So employees have a unique opportunity to not only make sure that everybody gets to work on sustainability and that it goes from an operational task to a cultural value, but they can also push the company to expand into areas that are maybe less desirable in terms of the things that they can do to really make sure that they're funneling as much of their energy and resources into climate solutions as possible.
Yeah, I love it. And my last question for you, because I know when you were at Microsoft, you helped found their green team, which has like grown significantly into like this global force, and I think is maybe the largest green team in the world, which is incredible. So I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about what the role of green teams, what is their role in employee engagement on climate in a workplace setting?
Yeah. Well, green teams, employee sustainability communities, for those that haven't heard of them, are basically the most democratic, the most inclusive, and the most efficient way to upskill the workforce on sustainability, to provide a baseline of climate literacy, and to create connections from people inside a company who otherwise have no reason to talk to each other. And from personal experience, both doing this inside Microsoft, as you said, co-founding and running the green team there for more than 5 years, and then of course the work I've done as a consultant since, and I would say the work that we've done over the last year and a half to build and grow the engagement from this community, the Learn Workplace Climate Action community. This is the best possible way to create a hive mind so that you don't have to figure out how to do this alone, because that's so demoralizing and difficult if you feel like you're the only person in your company who's concerned about climate change, and you feel like you want to do something with that anxiety maybe, or that feeling, but you don't know where to put it and you feel so isolated. Green teams are a way for you to realize that no, you're not the only person that feels that way. Community is a climate solution. Like we are hardwired to seek connections and community, and we don't always get that at work. So green teams are an incredibly efficient and democratic way for bottom-up employees to say, this is what we care about. We are a stakeholder group, just as important as the other ones to this business. And we want to work on sustainability, and we want to innovate new solutions, and we want to push the company to go further, and we want all the great things that can happen when employees get really well organized. Green teams are just the best way to do that. They're not the only way. If you can complement that or marry that with top-down efforts from the company to engage employees holistically, that's the secret sauce. But usually you have one at the beginning and then the other kind of comes and hopefully you get that wheel turning where both are going. But I really just can't say enough good things about green teams because they create the opportunity, they create the conditions, and right? The conditions so that everybody gets to work on sustainability in whichever way they can or would like to.
Awesome. Yeah, I would just plus the importance of green teams, especially when it comes to just building community and feeling like you're in this with other people is so critical. But that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Drew. I'm sure people will have a lot of great questions, and I'm sure a lot of people are probably part of their own green teams or want to start a green team at work. So I think people will have a lot to ask you. So yeah, thank you
Great.
so much for being here.
Yep. See you in the channel.